What the West fears most about Burkina Faso. In the heart of West Africa, a geopolitical time bomb is ticking. A nation that was once a key Western ally, is rising, strengthening, and it's running straight into the arms of Russia and China. This is not just a distant crisis. It is the story of how a poor country became the West's biggest nightmare in the Sahel, and why that nightmare could spread. To understand what the West truly fears, you must look past coups and headlines. You must see the fire burning inside the country, the ghosts of history that fuel its rage, and the powerful new friends it is making. The fire. Before we can understand Burkina Faso's pivot, we must see its pain. For the last decade, extremist violence has consumed the country. The Sahel is the global epicenter of jihadist terror, and Burkina Faso has been hit harder than most. Groups linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State, trained and armed by the West and funded by the Arab rulers, wage a relentless war on the state and the people. Whole villages have been emptied. Families flee into camps, their farms abandoned. Today, some 4 million people across the Sahel are displaced, over 2 million are in Burkina Faso alone. The attacks are brutal and constant. In August 2024, jihadists carried out a massacre in Barcelogo. Hundreds of civilians, many forced to dig defensive trenches, were surrounded and shot. Reports said as many as 400 people were killed. That massacre was not a single horror. It was proof that the old security systems were failing. For years the West, especially France, was the main security partner. French troops and advisors were present. Yet violence worsened. Trust in government crumbled. People asked, if foreign forces could not protect us, who could? That failure created the shock the country needed. In January 2022 a coup toppled the old guard. 8 months later a second coup brought a younger officer to power. He promised one thing above all, to stop the terror. To deliver, he would change the rules. The ghost of the past. To see why Burkina Faso turned away from the West, look to history. Colonial wounds remain raw. Many Burkinabe see French influence as neo-colonial control, a system that protects foreign interests and not local sovereignty. This sentiment found a leader in Captain Ibrahim Traoré. He channels the memory of Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary who fought for self-reliance and dignity before he was assassinated in 1987. Traoré calls his fight a second war of independence. He tells leaders to stop dancing every time the imperialists pull the strings. His words are not just rhetoric. They are a political force. Traoré reframes the suffering as a fight against foreign exploitation. The old partnerships are painted as part of the problem. Expelling French troops in early 2023 was more than policy, it was a symbol. The old rules no longer apply. The pivot. When the French left, Burkina Faso turned fast, to Russia and to China. This pivot is the heart of what the West fears. Russia's Africa Corps arrived to train and to fight. Russia offers security with no moral lectures. They trade protection for alignment, and that too for a little money. In May 2025, Traoré marched in Moscow and met with Vladimir Putin. The message was clear: new friends, new rules. China arrived in another way. While Russia provided soldiers and trainers, China sent weapons, vehicles, equipment, and infrastructure projects. Chinese arms and logistics gave the junta a visible, immediate boost in its fight. Roads, communications, and hardware began to change what was possible on the ground. Crucially, Burkina Faso also rejected the usual levers of Western power. ECOWAS influence and the conditional loans of the IMF and World Bank. By refusing those ties, the junta aimed to avoid the debt traps and political strings that long shaped African policy. That freedom means they can buy modern weapons, sign straight deals, strengthen their military, recapture lost ground from jihadists, and push hard for national development, all without the slow, moralizing conditions that Western partners often insist upon. For Western capitals, this is a nightmare. It is not only the loss of a single friend. It is the risk of a model being exposed. If a country can secure help, arms, and cash from Russia and China and then win territory back and show signs of rebuilding, others will watch and take note. The domino and the new game. Burkina Faso did not move alone. In September 2023 it joined Mali and Niger to form the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, a mutual defense pact. Together they formalized cooperation. Together they launched a common passport and began building a joint military force to fight jihadists. They spoke openly of a shared currency and a regional investment bank. On January 29, 2025, they left ECOWAS. That decision struck at the heart of a regional system long shaped by Western influence. Sanctions from ECOWAS and pressure for a return to civilian rule were rejected. By walking away, the AES signaled that the old rules were no longer binding. The wider danger to the West is clear: a domino effect. If Burkina Faso's path seems to work, if it recaptures territory, defeats insurgents, rebuilds basic services, and shows a narrative of regained sovereignty, other fragile states may follow. They may reject ECOWAS, ignore IMF constraints, and tighten bonds with Moscow and Beijing. Intelligence sharing networks fray. Western bases and influence shrink. The strategic map changes. The economic alarm, and Western retaliation. Here is the blunt truth that keeps Western halls buzzing with meetings at night: Africa matters a lot. The continent supplies raw materials, strategic minerals, food, and trade routes. Western access to African wealth underpins many industries. The loss of influence is not only political, it is economic. Some analysts point to tens of billions of dollars in annual gains tied to African trade, investment, and resource access. In plain terms, Europe and the West benefit hugely from African resources and markets. Lose that access, and supply chains strain, prices rise, and industries face severe shocks. Because the stakes are so high, do not assume the West will surrender quietly. This is where caution is crucial: the West will retaliate. Losing a region like the Sahel, a buffer against extremism and a source of minerals, is too costly. Expect pushback, sanctions, covert pressure, diplomatic isolation for the juntas, targeted measures to choke external support, and efforts to rebuild alliances with other African states. Expect campaigns to undermine the AES politically and economically. Expect intelligence operations to be intensified, because without timely intelligence, the West fears losing control. This is not just geopolitics. It is also money and survival for parts of Europe's economy. That fuels urgency and hard responses. The West cannot afford to lose Africa quietly, and it will take measures to try and stop a spread of influence that favors rival powers. What the West fears most. Put simply, these are the fears driving Western policy. 1. Loss of influence in a strategic buffer region. 2. a domino effect, more countries follow Burkina Faso's lead. 3. Breakdown of ECOWAS and regional control, intelligence and coordination collapse. 4. Freedom from IMF/World Bank constraints, countries escape Western leverage and debt dependence. 5. Stronger militaries bought from Russia and China that can defeat local insurgents and retake land. 6. Independent nation building that undermines the Western model of conditional aid and influence. 7. Economic fallout, losing access to African wealth harms industries and supply chains in Europe. 8. Retaliation, the West will use political, economic, and covert means to protect its interests. These fears are not abstract. They shape decisions in capitals. They drive new investments, new alliances, and, yes, new opportunities. The gamble and the coming clash. Captain Traoré's gamble is massive. He trades a robust partnership for a new set of friends who promise speed, arms, and fewer conditions. That path may bring permanent gains, retaken towns, visible security, and a narrative of independence. It may also bind Burkina Faso into new friends like Moscow and Beijing. The West sees more than a regime change. It sees a model competing with its own, transactional, authoritarian, and confident. The fear is that, this model spreads and that the old levers, ECOWAS, IMF, World Bank, Western intelligence, are weakened. Because the economic stakes are so large, because Africa's wealth matters to Europe, the West will not stand aside. Retaliation, in one form or another, is likely. Burkina Faso now sits at the center of a test: which model will deliver order, security, and growth? Which will win the hearts of people who have long been promised more than they received? The outcome will matter far beyond its borders, for the Sahel, for Africa, and for a world where power and resources decide much of the future. In the end, Burkina Faso is a mirror. It shows what happens when old promises fail and new powers move in. The West fears the reflection, and it will do much to change what it sees.